Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Many women find that the strategies they use in their 20s and 30s no longer work, and the arrival of midlife belly fat often feels sudden and discouraging. Beyond the physical changes, there are real health implications and cultural pressures that make this an especially complex challenge. Okay. To help us unpack the biology, the cultural narratives, and the medical advances that are reshaping the way we think about midlife weight loss, I'm joined today by Dr. Heather Awad. Dr. Awad is a family medicine physician, entrepreneur, podcast host, and the founder and CEO of Vibrant Menopause Weight Loss, where she helps professional women finally lose weight for the last time. She's also a frequent guest on national podcasts and the co-author of Thriving After Burnout. In our discussion, Dr. Awad and I will explore why weight gain happens in perimenopause and menopause, what makes visceral fat at midlife particularly concerning, and how lifestyle strategies and GLP-1 medications can work together or not to support sustainable health outcomes. This episode offers both clarity and compassion for a topic that impacts so many women. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to dig into this. And before we started recording, I was talking about how the end of the year is really a time where women start to think about the holiday weight gain, the New Year's resolutions, what they're going to do differently in the new year. And especially this season of life, there's a lot of frustration around that weight gain that seems very stubborn, comes along in the midsection especially. And so I'm excited to dig in a little bit more today.
Yeah, that's great. It's true. And it comes on, like you said, it comes on suddenly and you're like, what is going on? It's really frustrating.
Yes. So could you start by sharing today what drew you to focus on midlife weight loss and specifically how perimenopause and menopause are changing the picture for women?
Sure. So I'm a family doctor, as you said, and I was always that food as medicine doctor. So if your cholesterol was high, I'd say, hey, let's talk about what you eat for lunch. Then I'm going along just fine. And then my mid-40s hit, and all of a sudden I'm just gaining weight. It's just going up and up. And I had not changed anything. And this is the story I hear from my clients as well. And it's mostly in the belly region. All of a sudden my clothes don't fit. So I tried the things that worked before, like after I had babies, and none of those work at all. And it just keeps going up and up. Then I ended up using one of those app-based programs on your phone, and worked really hard and really restricted and lost some of the weight and asked them what the maintenance protocol was. And they said, well, add 250 calories to what you're doing and let's see how it goes. And I was angry because I thought, this is not a life. I'm not going to restrict and count calories and all these things for the rest of my life. So I stopped and then I bounced back to an even higher weight. So around 50, 51, I just thought, my body is broken. What is wrong with me? And then all of a sudden I noticed I was in menopause. This transition was happening. My periods were stopping. And I thought, wait a second, there's got to be something hormonal going on. So I dove into the research and found that there's this bump in insulin resistance that you get at this point in life. And I thought, oh, well, this is something I know what to do about. So then I also invested in some coaching and I learned to stop eating my feelings and using food to make myself feel better. And putting those two things together, it got really simple to lose the weight. I lost 27 pounds. I have no fear of gaining it back again. And I thought, well, this could be something that I could bring to the world because a lot of women have the same issue and it seems very sticky and mysterious. So that's kind of what brought me into doing this for my work.
Yeah, I think that's really important to point out that you did seek outside help, even though you had the knowledge and the expertise and the ability to do your own research. Sometimes that accountability piece and the cheerleader or the foot to your fire kind of coach, whichever works best for you, can really
Yeah.
help someone get over those hurdles and find sustainable changes.
Yeah, for sure. It really does help. And that's why people work with you and me, right?
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about insulin resistance, and I think that's a lot to do with the biological why behind the weight gain in
Mhm.
perimenopause and menopause. Can you kind of get into that a little bit for those of us who are listening that don't understand what that quite means?
Sure, sure. So when we eat food, our bodies generally turn a lot of it to glucose. And that goes into the bloodstream. And then insulin comes in, totally normal, and processes it, basically brings it into the cells for use. And the problem is that when it's not working well, we need more insulin in the bloodstream to bring that glucose into the cells. Well, just by dropping your estrogen goes throughout your whole body. So it affects the digestive tract as well. So when estrogen drops, our insulin starts to not work as well. So we get this sudden bump in insulin resistance, which gives us a sudden increase in our insulin levels in general. So while we have this extra insulin around and it's bringing the glucose into the cells for our bodies to use for energy, it also is still very good at telling our body to store fat. So we end up in Western society particularly, with high insulin around maybe all the time. And so the natural thing that's supposed to happen is that it brings the glucose into the cells like of your brain so you can think, and of your heart so that your heart will beat. And then it stores some, and then insulin will drop low, and your body will from there take a little bit of energy that's stored in the liver as glycogen, and then we'll just use fat as energy in between meals. But when we get this bump and we have insulin high all the time, it is possible that sometimes, some days, you may not be using fat for energy at all. And that gets to be the problem. So a lot of women will say, I was doing just fine. And then all of a sudden, I gained this weight. And that is that bump in insulin resistance. You're just seeing it right before your eyes.
Thank you for explaining that for a lot of people, because I think we hear those phrases, insulin resistance or metabolic
Mhm.
syndrome, and we kind of pass them off as like, oh, okay, that's what that is, but don't really understand how that's physiologically working in the body. So one of the things that I hear a lot is that women notice a fat distribution changing. They tend to get that menopause belly. I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching this as a clip. And so a lot of that can cause a lot of frustration, especially for women, because it feels like it's stubborn fat. It's not going anywhere. They may have never had an issue with that distribution before. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that is and why we're noticing that specific change?
Sure. This does relate to insulin resistance. It's why you see men with like a beer gut that we talk about sometimes. But that's what you see. And before, you may have had, if you're gaining weight that isn't insulin resistance, it may be a little bit more all over. This belly fat comes with some tolls as well. It's usually deeper, even though you're noticing that it's making your pants not fit as well. It can be in and around the organs. It can cause inflammation. It can get into the liver, which causes problems because our liver doesn't work as well. So it's very frustrating because it changes our body shape, but it is also actually a kind of fat that can cause problems with our health.
And that's the visceral fat that a lot of people they don't necessarily understand. There's the subcutaneous fat, which is a lot of the aesthetics, but then there's the visceral fat, which is the more serious health implications. So what are some of the health risks about having that increased visceral fat?
Well, with inflammation, you can have problems with heart disease. It can increase your risk for cancers, certain cancers. And like I said, you only get one liver, and this can infiltrate into the liver as well. So it doesn't detoxify your blood as well.
So those are some serious things that we all need to be paying attention to. And, I think there's a lot of things tied up in weight. And I've noticed that with a lot of women, when I'm talking to them as clients or even just people that I come in contact with who have heard a podcast episode or know what I do, it seems like fat loss is the number one reason that drives women to discuss menopause and how to lose that weight. And I feel like there's a lot of self-worth tied up in the number on the scale. There's a lot of societal pressures around that. And what do you talk about with your clients or use as a motivator instead of a barrier about sustainable changes when it comes to stepping away from the number on the scale and kind of taking that self-worth out of what we weigh?
Sure. I mean, we work on probably two things. And one of them is when you step on the scale, this is the gravitational pull of your body on Earth, standing on this scale. And we kind of examine, what are we making that mean? Because sometimes we do make it mean something like, I'm a bad person. I'm not good at my job. I'm not in control of my life. And these things are probably not true. Because if you didn't step on the scale, you would still be in control of your life and you'd still be good at your job and you'd still be a good person. So we can look at some of the thoughts that we have when we step on the scale. The other thing is, I get a lot of people who come to me and say, I want to lose weight so that I can feel better about myself. And what I tell them is that these are two separate tracks. We will work on the nutrition and how we can eat to lose the weight in a really healthy way. And then we also are going to work on feeling better about ourselves, because we can do that immediately. And so we do those things together when people work with me. And usually they feel better about themselves before they've gotten to goal weight. And so those things are separate. So we don't have to feel bad about ourselves. We don't have to beat ourselves up all the way down. We want to actually love ourselves all the way down. I think the problem is that, and I don't have science on this, but
yeah, of course.
But when you get to goal weight, if you don't like yourself, then you're not going to keep your weight off, and you're still not going. Actually, having that number of the goal weight is not going to make you like yourself. You're thinking, I'm going to get there, and then I'll feel better about myself, and that's probably not true. So we can do these things separately. Can start working on becoming a friend to ourselves and thinking better thoughts about ourselves, and we can lose the weight. So then when you get to goal weight, you're like, well, I already like myself and now I'm at goal weight and I'm going to just keep going with these things that I've learned. So this is a really sustainable lifestyle going forward.
Yeah. And there's so many emotions tied up around weight and body image, but then there's also emotions tied up with food. And like you said, figuring out and learning the patterns of emotional eating or mindset around food. It's so much more complex than just give me a meal plan and let me lose the weight. Because as soon as you step out of that plan, life still catches up.
Right. Yeah. And when people work with me, that's what we do. We think about, what works on a work day, what works on a day you're home with your kids, what works on a day you're visiting your parents, all these things. Because you want it to fit into your life and become a lifestyle that's really doable and sustainable and that you think, well, I would definitely do this for at least 10 years. So yeah, there's a lot wrapped up in there to unravel.
Yeah. I have found that when I've had women come to me and say, like, just tell me what to eat, just tell me what to cook, tell me how much to eat of it, and I can do it. And it's like, yeah, but when we're done, where does that leave you? I mean, it's a lot harder than that and a lot more complicated. So that's good that you're seeing that with your clients and working beyond that and into some more sustainable changes.
Yeah, and there's some formulas, but you just have to think about, how does that formula work for your life? I've got I worked with a lawyer who said, I'm never going to cook during the day. I'm never going to bring lunch. How do I make this work? And then I have someone else who said, I want to meal prep on Sundays. So, okay, well, let's make that work for you. So there are different ways of doing it. And really, once you kind of know the formulas of how to eat, you can make it fit into your life.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit now. Let's step into the conversation of GLP-1s, because I'm sure if anybody sees GLP-1 in the conversation, in the title, in the podcast show
Yeah.
notes, they're gonna want to get to this part. Like, there's a lot of questions around it. So let's talk about the current conversation around GLP-1
Mhm.
medications like Ozempic and Wegovy. Let's start with how do they work and where they fit into the bigger picture of menopause-related weight gain.
Well, I don't prescribe these medications. I want to say this ahead of time that I'm not an expert on them, but they work both in the gut and in the brain to kind of stop the mind chatter and to decrease hunger. We have naturally occurring, this GLP-1 is a naturally occurring substance that does reduce our hunger. So it's kind of how these medications work. As far as menopause goes, I have mixed feelings about them for menopause. I would let people know that if really your weight was totally fine until you hit your 40s and 50s, you don't need them if you would like to choose to not do that. I get a lot of clients who come to me and say, my doctor gave me this prescription and I didn't want to do that. And that's a lot of the people that I work with. If you would like to choose them, they are a drug that will probably work. They have their own risk and benefit profile. I think for people who have had issues with their weight long term and then they get to midlife and it's worse, it can also be a great medication. Also, there's a whole group of people who have metabolic issues that their doctor is going to say, this really is the best thing for you. And I would say it's worth trying. The thing that I worry about is that they're expensive. Even if your insurance covers it, oftentimes you still have to pay quite a bit out of pocket. I know a lot of people that use them short term. They use them for a certain number of months and then they stop. And really, you need to know how to eat to sustain the weight loss afterwards. And when I talk to my friends who are obesity medicine doctors, they struggle with getting folks to eat protein and vegetables with their meals because they're saying, oh, I'm just not really hungry, so I just eat a little bit of something and move on. But when they go off, if they decide to go off the medication, they will just regain the weight again. And so I worry about it as like a very expensive medical yo-yo diet for some people. So if you're thinking, I'm just going to do this for a couple months and stop, it may not work well for you because you still need to know how to eat.
Are you ready to finally get personalized support for your midlife health without committing to a long program? With my new one-on-one coaching model, you'll start with a single 50-minute deep dive session where we review your full health history, lifestyle, and current concerns. Together, we'll create a plan designed specifically around your hormones, stress, sleep, and nutrition, one that's actually realistic for your life. From there, you can book follow-up sessions whenever you need them to stay on track, get accountability, overcome obstacles, or simply have someone cheering you on along the way. There's no pressure, no long-term contract, and no need to repeat the initial consult. Once you've completed that first session, you're my client for life, and we'll keep in touch in between your sessions. This flexible approach is built for real midlife women who want to experience guidance, science-based strategies, and compassionate support that evolves with them. If you're ready to take the first step, visit womenmasteringmidlife.com to book your free 15-minute discovery call. Let's talk about your goals and map out your next steps toward feeling vibrant, confident, and in control of your health again. Talking about what you're eating while you're on the GLP-1s, I think is really important for people to start to dig into what the issues they have around food or their feelings or psychology around food, but also understanding nutrition. I think that's really important. So could you touch a little bit on that for us?
Sure. Really at every meal at midlife, which will help you lose weight, but also help you feel better in general and have more energy and less brain fog at midlife, is to make sure that you have some protein and some vegetables or berries at every meal and some healthy fats. That really should be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or if you fast and you only eat 2 meals, it should be at both of those. I do meet women who will say, well, I had this green salad for lunch. What's wrong with that? And I'll ask them what protein they had with it, and they didn't have any. So we need to have some with every meal. That's really one of the basics. I also find that a lot of women are really having more sugar than they know that they're having in their in their world. I have a group that just started at the beginning of the month. In the first 2 weeks, one of the women in particular said, "Oh my gosh, my grocery order, I looked at it and all this stuff has added sugar." In the United States, there's an added sugar line, and you want to make sure that if there's sugar in there. Like for me personally, I don't want sugar in my nut butter ever, but I want to sometimes have dessert and have a piece of pie, and I know there's a lot of sugar in there. But I eat nut butter many days of the week, and I don't want sugar in there. So it's important to look at those ingredient labels and find where it's been hidden. It's in about 75% of our cans and boxes and in the United States at this point. So you really want to look at that. I had one client who had a can of what was supposed to be plain chickpeas, and it had added sugar in it.
Huh.
So
Wow.
you really just have to look, because there are good brands that do not have that. I don't want sugar in my spaghetti sauce. I don't want sugar
that's a big one.
in my nut butter, as I said. And so you need to look at that as well, so that you're choosing when you have your sugar and not having it at other times.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's so many places that manufacturers sneak sugar in. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It really
and it's not really necessary, especially when you were talking about added sugars. The first thing I thought of was marinara sauce from a jar. If you're not making it from scratch, which I've made marinara from scratch, and it's beautiful. It's delicious, but it takes a lot of time. And so I don't even have time to do that very often. And when I don't, I've grabbed jars off the shelf and I've looked at them, and some of them have 28, 30 grams of added sugar. And it's like, this is a soda in my spaghetti, it's just, there's a time and place for sugar. I agree. And I think sometimes we get wrapped up in sugar content, period, or carbohydrate content in foods. And so people get scared of fruits or carbohydrates that have natural sugars in them. And those are two different things, correct?
Very true. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can eat blueberries, which taste very sweet, but they have a lot of fiber in them, even though they don't even taste that fibrous. So they're not going to, make your blood sugar jump up high. So they won't make your insulin jump up high. So, but they taste very sweet. One of my kids doesn't like sweet food and doesn't like blueberries because of that. But it's not, with all the fiber in there, it protects your body from a sugar bump in the bloodstream.
Yeah. So those are the glycemic index, all those things are very deep things we could get into on another conversation. But I think that's something that I've noticed is when you tell women, like, it's okay to eat half a banana in your smoothie, or it's okay to have berries with your breakfast. They kind of look panicked, and it's like, carbs are not your enemy. Added sugar is your enemy. Carbs are not your enemy.
Yeah. Very true.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the practical things that women can do from a nutrition and lifestyle standpoint, because I think while I like to talk about GLP-1s, I think that I appreciate that you don't prescribe them and they're not necessarily the answer for all midlife women. I do like the idea that if your weight has been okay until you've hit midlife, it may not necessarily be something that you need to add on board. And actually, before we go into lifestyle, let's talk a little bit about some of the side effects or dangers with GLP-1s, because there is a risk ratio. There's a benefit risk ratio to it, and I want to make sure people are aware of the risks if we're going to talk about them at all.
Sure. The thing that I think is as top of mind are the gut effects. Many people feel nauseous the whole time they take it because it really slows down the gut. And then there can actually be some freezing of the gut that needs, in the most extreme case, that needs a surgery. So those are the things that are kind of top of mind for me. Like I said, I'm not an expert on those medications, but those are the things that I hear most about.
Yeah. So if we're looking, if women are listening to this conversation and they're like, okay, I want to try lifestyle modifications and I want to try some nutrition changes before jumping into asking my provider about a medication like this, what are some things that the woman who feels like she's tried absolutely everything, what's one of the first steps that she could use today to make some changes?
Sure. I would say a couple of things. One is to choose when you're going to have your sugar and have it maybe once or twice a week. A lot of women, even just knowing what they eat, notice that there's a lot of little bits of sugar here and there, and that is working against your weight loss. Also, things like bread and crackers, also maybe go to once a week on those, because they will also spike your blood sugar, which leaves you in a higher insulin state. The other thing that I really tell people, and they think that's too simple, but when you eat protein and vegetables and have a little fat with your meals, you are more likely to be able to get to the next meal without needing a snack. And when you go between meals because you've had enough food to eat, then your insulin goes low and your body will naturally burn fat as energy. I had a pediatrician I work with who looked a little bit annoyed with me that it was that simple, but she got to the point where she was eating enough at lunchtime to get through to dinner, and she liked to eat breakfast as well. And the weight just fell off. And she just said, wow, that was just really so simple. And people will tell me it can't be that. And I'm like, it actually is, because if you notice, you're not doing that now, and it would be a change. So making sure every meal has that protein and some vegetables or berries and a little bit of fat, and then really go to eating meals instead of eating snacks.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, myself included, I'm guilty. I will rush through the morning. I have my coffee while I'm getting the kids ready and get their lunches packed or whatever. I make sure they have a lunch ready, but I don't necessarily have one. And then I get to like 2, 3 o'clock and I'm starving and I have to put something in my mouth right away. And the only thing quick is obviously not cutting up a salad or cooking a piece of chicken. It's what's in a bar, or like what's in a wrapper that I can throw in my mouth right away, or I can eat in the car while I'm going to pick up a kid at a sport or whatnot. And I feel like the convenience of that and the mindlessness of not putting yourself first turns into these bad habits that we need to be conscious of.
Right. And you can start to think of what is quick and easy that isn't in a wrapper. An avocado is very quick and easy. Open it up, sprinkle some salt on, and eat it. Very easy. But to your point, I really do encourage people to make sure that they look at the day and say, when am I going to eat? And have a more intentional day so that you get a full midday meal if that's going to serve you well. And then you'll make it till dinner.
Because then it's not 3 o'clock and you're like grabbing something. Oh, those protein bars there. And it's funny because I've noticed myself, I've talked a lot with women about like, well, okay, so that's what you ate as a quick 20 grams of protein, 200 calorie thing. But how did that make you feel? And I don't know if I've ever felt great after eating. They're so highly processed. And the protein that you're eating isn't even that great.
Right. Yeah, very true. And either they have a lot of sugar in them also, or if you get the ones that have no sugar, a lot of people still have this eat something sweet, want something sweet. So it increases your cravings, even if it's like a no sugar protein bar. And so I'm not a fan. It's not that I never have them myself, because we have them in my house, but I'm not a fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I try to, there's a couple that I'll throw one out there. I really like Built Puffs because they taste like a candy bar, but that's more of a dessert for me. Like if I've had dinner and I want a dessert, I'll lean that way because it still has protein. It's not a high sugar. So I feel a little bit better about it than grabbing like a bowl of ice cream or something. But that is true. And there's things that I have for the kids that my midlife body shouldn't be eating like they do. But that's another story for another day. Can you walk us through the simple process you've developed to help women lose weight at midlife without willpower battles?
Sure. So a lot of it is eating just as I've described, because you will feel well, you will have sustained energy, and you won't feel hungry in between meals. So that does really help. And then we also work on things like, what days are difficult for eating? Is it Thursday at work because of midday meetings or whatever you have? Is it when you go to your mother-in-law's house and there's an extended family gathering. You're looking at those things and finding out what does make that day sticky and difficult, and kind of working through how to deal with that. Do we need to think about what we're going to say to other people when they have ideas about what we should eat? Do we need to look at the schedule and say, where am I going to stick those meals in there because I need to nourish my body? So I feel great and do a great job at work on Thursday because that's important to me. So those are, a big part of it. And then also looking at the emotions, feeling your emotions instead of eating them is a skill that has to be learned.
Yeah. And I feel like these are a lot of processes that someone could be listening and think through, but really could use the support of a community or a coach. And so how do you feel about the role of a community and support when it comes to mindset at this stage of life, when it comes to lasting weight loss?
Sure. I used to do mostly one-on-one weight loss coaching, and I've moved to doing it in smaller groups now because people love sharing that experience together, noticing that other people have the same questions that they do, or that they might ask a question they hadn't thought of, because we all have blind spots as well. They're like, oh, I have that problem too, but I hadn't noticed it. When I noticed I was eating my feelings, I noticed this with other people because I thought eating your feelings was, Bridget Jones on the couch after a breakup with a big thing of ice cream. And I thought, well, I never do that. And I didn't realize that I was doing a lot of eating my feelings. I just was standing in the pantry after having a fight with my teenager and sticking my hand in the sugar cereal. That's not the same, right? But by talking these things through with other people, I found my own blind spots as well. And it's fun to share the journey. You have some accountability to your coach, but you also have accountability to each other. You can encourage each other. You can share recipes. Because you're kind of pivoting what you're going to do with how you eat in general. So it's fun to share those lifestyle changes with other people who are doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's strength in numbers too. And if you're not getting the support, sometimes these are journeys that we take on our own. My 14-year-old isn't going to take the same approach to nutrition and weight loss that I want to take, or you have a spouse or coworkers that are wanting to go out to eat or aren't interested in bettering their nutrition. So when you have that community that every week we're going to sit together either in person or on a Zoom and we're going to check in or we can message each other, having that support of I'm going through this with you, I feel like makes a big difference.
Definitely. And a lot of us, I think, live in almost hostile territory for wanting to eat healthy. I have a client who was a endocrinology doctor, and they do thyroid and hormones and diabetes. And she said that there were donuts in her break room every day. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that are challenges. So it's nice to have other people to talk to about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I worked in a retail pharmacy setting, we had candy or chips, or somebody would go grab a bag of licorice. I worked for Target for a long time, we had the Pizza Hut in the Target.
Oh, yeah.
So like breadsticks would be a quick thing to go grab. And I'm thinking, like, when I was 25, having breadsticks for lunch wasn't really a good idea, but it certainly wouldn't be a good idea now. But right. you have them right in your face because other people in the pharmacy are eating them. And I know sometimes physicians are the worst about taking care of themselves. And when you have those things readily available and you're quickly going from patient to patient, or I've talked with attorneys who they're in between meetings, they're shoving something in their face really quick. And the break room is a war zone. I really do believe that the break room is a war zone.
And if you think back to Halloween, either you ate the leftover candy or you came and dumped it into the break room, right? So it was just full of candy.
Totally. I totally sent that to work. Or the leftover birthday cake. When we would get a big sheet cake for birthday parties or big events, they all went to work. And it's kind of cruel, isn't it? It's like throwing a grenade in there yourself.
Right.
So
Very
to
true.
anybody out there who's curious about how they could work with you or where to find you, let's let them know how they can do that, because like there's a lot of different coaches for a lot of different people. And if someone's listening right now and they really resonate with what you're saying and they want to learn more about working with you, how do they do that?
Sure. So I work exclusively with professional women. So we talk about work and leading our teams, and we do talk about home as well, but that's the group. And you can come connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can listen to the Vibrant Menopause podcast, which is my podcast, where we talk about weight loss and also about other midlife health issues that people want to hear about. Or you can go to my website as well, vibrant-md.com. And those are great ways to connect with me.
Wonderful. And then before you were recording, you talked about the best breakfast for menopause free guide that you have. And I'm going to put that link in the show notes as well. So I'll put all of your LinkedIn and website and podcast information so they can find you that way. And then also the free guide if they're interested in getting some great starts to their day with the breakfast menu or recipes. And so in closing, what's one message you would want every midlife woman to carry with her about her body, her health, and the possibility for change?
Sure. I would say in general, it's a very exciting time. You are going through a big body phase change, and there's pluses and minuses to it for sure. But it's the last big one, and so it's also exciting in that way. I would say also that weight loss from perimenopause and menopause is possible. You are not broken. There is a way for you to lose weight, to feel more like yourself again. And so don't give up hope and be kind to yourself, because you don't have to be mean to yourself to get that weight loss.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I enjoyed talking with you about things that I feel like I find to be something I talk about all the time. And it seems very simple. It's not easy, but it is very simple when you break it down. So I appreciate your take on it. And thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.